I present to you my top 50 architectural visualization studios in Europe. Let's jump right in. Number 50, Wilby. Wilby is one of those studios where you instantly feel this work was made for architects first. Their visual language is calm, restrained, and quietly confident. No flashy hero shots, no overproduced drama. Instead, they lean into everyday, believable moments. A quiet courtyard with tall grasses, a soft overcast street corner, a building framed through trees, an interior where natural light does most of the heavy lifting. The grading stays muted and airy, gentle grays, warm wood tones, and greens that feel genuinely real rather than digitally saturated. Composition is all about clarity, clean horizons, patient camera heights, and frames that give the architecture room to breathe. Even when the perspective gets dramatic, tall facade upshots, skyline towers, it still feels measured. Never loud, people are placed like punctuation marks. Small, natural, proving scale and life without ever stealing the scene. What I keep coming back to is how they treat landscape and atmosphere as design material. Wind in the grass, a slightly hazy sky, soft evening light, it all supports the concept instead of competing with it. If you want visuals that communicate intent, proportion, and mood with real taste, Wilby is top tier. Number 49, Studio Sang. Studio Sang is a Copenhagen-based visual storytelling studio focused on architectural imagery and animation. What I like about their portfolio is how photographic it feels, without losing architectural clarity. They're great at framing. Lots of foreground elements, trees and silhouettes that guide your eye, plus wide breathing space in the sky that makes buildings feel calm and confident. You also see a strong range of moods. There are crisp, blue-hour city shots with reflections on water, but also stormy, dramatic skies that make a simple building suddenly feel cinematic. Interiors are another highlight. Warm timber ceilings, layered spaces, and believable everyday life. The scenes feel lived in because the people aren't just decoration, they're part of the story and the circulation. And then there's the scale, aerial perspectives where the building sits naturally inside a huge landscape, plus close-ups that focus on material and detail. They even use bold, almost editorial compositions. If you're into visualization that sits right between architecture, atmosphere, and photography, Studio Sang is absolutely worth bookmarking. Number 48, Imigo. When you look at Imigo's work, the first thing that hits you is range, but also control. They can go from intimate, quiet interiors to huge public spaces and even speculative worlds, and it still feels like the same visual mind behind it. You see it in the way they handle composition. Strong leading lines, clean silhouettes, and a lot of confidence with negative space. In their large-scale scenes like the timber atrium and airport interiors, the structure isn't just there, it's the main character. Repetition, rhythm, and scale are readable at a glance, and the lighting is used to guide your eye through the space, almost like wayfinding. Then look at the atmosphere work. Fog, winter haze, soft daylight, warm windows in the distance. These are not random effects. They're used to simplify shapes, separate layers, and make the scene feel lived in. Even in the more conceptual shots, Imigo keeps it believable through material logic and disciplined color grading. Nothing screams CG. It's calm, cinematic, and intentional. If you like ArchViz that feels designed, not just rendered, Imigo is worth studying closely. Number 47, ASD. ASD is one of those studios that can switch gears without losing their identity. On the surface, the work is very polished and architectural. Clean lines, sharp detailing, believable materials. But the real signature is how they direct the image. They're not afraid of bold decisions. You'll see bright, graphic daylight scenes where color becomes part of the composition, almost like a design poster. And then in the next project, they'll go full cinematic with a deep sunset, wet ground, glowing interiors, and that you can feel the air atmosphere. What ties it together is control. Their framing is deliberate, with strong silhouettes and a lot of confidence in negative space. Context is handled like storytelling, not decoration. Streets, landscape, people, even the weather are staged to support the architecture's mood. And when they go conceptual, they still keep it tasteful. Never messy, never random. As they also describe themselves as a small, passionate visualization studio working internationally since 2014. And that shows the work feels careful, crafted, and consistently high-end. If you want ArchViz that can be realistic and expressive without slipping into cliché, ASD is absolutely worth watching. Number 46. Silent. Silence work is built for clients who need architecture to read fast and sell well. They position themselves as a full-scope ArchViz studio for architects and real estate developers, covering stills, animation, virtual walkthroughs, and interactive presentations. Visually, a lot of their strongest images sit right on that line between clarity and atmosphere. In the big urban shots, the camera is usually confident and pulled back enough to explain context, scale, and circulation. Like a proper "this is where it lands in the city" statement. Then they switch to mood when the project meets desire. Low sun, haze, warm glazing, and silhouettes that feel incidental rather than staged, which is very typical for high-end residential marketing. What I like is the discipline. Materials stay clean, reflections are sharp but not flashy, and lighting is used to guide your eye to the main gesture of the building, not to show off render tricks. The result is persuasive, developer-ready imagery that still respects the architect's intent, which is exactly why their portfolio reads as approval-friendly work. Number 45. Marchenko Novak Studio. Marchenko Novak Studio's signature is photographic realism without the "look at me" vibe. Clean compositions, restrained color palettes, and light that's always doing the heavy lifting. A lot of the work is built around strong, readable geometry and balanced framing. You'll see centered, almost architectural elevations where symmetry and rhythm carry the image, softened by believable landscaping and subtle imperfections. They're also great at time-of-day storytelling. In the evening scenes, the architecture becomes a lantern, warm interior glow, carefully controlled contrast, and reflections that feel engineered rather than rendered. It's polished but never plastic. What I personally love is how they treat context. Atmosphere is used like a lens filter, not a special effect. Skies stay calm, shadows stay natural, and the environment supports the building instead of competing with it. If you want a studio that sells architecture through clarity, mood, and taste, Marchenko Novak is top tier and honestly one of the strongest visual languages coming out of Ukraine right now. Number 44. Norma Images. Norma Images, a Stockholm-based studio with a clear positioning I really respect, from architects to architects. You can feel it in every frame. This isn't loud, glossy real estate marketing. Their work leans editorial, almost like architectural photography that happens to be CG. They build images around composition and narrative first, with confident negative space, strong framing, and a calm, intentional pace. Look at how they use atmosphere: overcast skies, soft haze, wet pavement, warm dusk light. Weather and season aren't decoration here, they're part of the story. And they stage people in a way that feels believable, understated, sometimes even like a film still, just enough to give scale and life without stealing the scene. Materiality is also super controlled, crisp, realistic, but never over-sharpened or CG shiny. Overall, Norma is the kind of partner architects want when the goal is clarity, design intent, and mood, especially for competitions and high-end presentations. Number 43, Mino. Mino isn't just a render studio, they're a full visual launch partner. Brand identity, film, immersive experiences, website design, marketing strategy. They build entire worlds around projects, not just pretty pictures. Their visual language? Quiet, editorial, controlled. Think modernist restraint, breathing room, confident framing, a palette that stays calm and premium. They lean into material honesty and atmosphere without the Instagram drama. Even when things get cinematic, it's polished and grown up. Never flashy. What sets them apart? Art direction discipline. Everything looks like it belongs to the same story, whether it's architecture, graphics, or campaign assets. And they work globally. International positioning, branding first. If you want ArchViz that feels like design culture, not just visualization, Mino is one of the best in Portugal. Number 42, Ramka. Ramka's images feel less like marketing renders and more like carefully shot architectural photography. Their whole visual language is built around framing and restraint. Big, calm compositions with lots of breathing room, a single subject placed dead center or slightly off, and the world is allowed to stay quiet around it. You see it in the airport sunrise shot with the plane silhouette, or the winter scenes where the architecture sits inside a huge sky and soft snow haze. Lighting is never loud. It's natural, cinematic, and often weather-driven. Fog, blue hour, low winter sun, rain-wet reflections. That atmosphere does a lot of storytelling work, and it makes the projects feel lived in without needing busy details. Ramka also loves scale and contrast. Tiny human figures against monumental forms, like that dramatic interior with the oversized cone element, or distant silhouettes that turn a building into a stage. Even when they go graphic, like black and white frames and reflections, the mood stays minimalist and precise. My take, Ramka's strength is emotional clarity. They don't oversell the architecture. They frame it, let it breathe, and that confidence is exactly what makes the images hit. Number 41, Seki Smith. Seki Smith's images feel like they're built around one idea. Find the moment where the architecture becomes a story, and then strip everything else away. They work between London and Florence, and you can feel that mix of urban density and Mediterranean calm in the way they handle light and space. A lot of their gallery is about balance. Composition is clean and deliberate, with strong horizontals and clear silhouettes, so you read the project instantly. But it never turns diagrammatic. They bring in atmosphere just enough to make it human. Soft daylight, gentle haze, warm interiors, and people that behave naturally instead of posing for the camera. They're also comfortable across scales. 1 minute you're in a quiet courtyard scene where materials and proportion do the work, and the next you're looking at big mixed-use developments that still feel grounded and believable. That's why they're a strong partner for architects and designers who want images that are simple, confident, and emotionally precise. Number 40, Janusz. Janusz is a Vienna-based visualization studio working across architecture and real estate with a clear love for atmosphere and photographic storytelling. What stands out in their portfolio is how calm and believable everything feels. They lean into real-world light, winter blue skies, soft overcast streets, wet asphalt at dusk, and those crisp, clean daylight shots where materials stay honest instead of glossy. Composition-wise, they're not chasing drama for drama's sake. They frame buildings the way a good photographer would. Strong foregrounds, natural scale cues, and people used sparingly, just enough to sell life and proportion. Even when the architecture is bold, the image stays grounded. On top of that, their range is solid, from minimal city moments to more iconic statement visuals, always with tight art direction and consistent taste. If you're into ArchViz that feels real, quiet, and confident, Janusz is absolutely worth a closer look. Number 39, Frame. Frame is a visualization studio that treats every rendering like a carefully composed photograph. What stands out immediately is their calm, naturalistic mood. A lot of the work is framed through landscape, trees in the foreground, soft overcast skies, gentle morning light, so the architecture feels embedded in a real place instead of sitting on top of a backdrop. They're also really strong at human scale. People are never decoration. They're used to explain how spaces are lived in. Small groups chatting on a plaza, pedestrians crossing a street, quiet moments in front of a residential facade. It makes the projects feel believable and approachable, which is exactly what architects need when they present unbuilt ideas. On the technical side, the lighting is clean and restrained, materials are subtle, and the grading stays muted, almost editorial. Even when they go darker, like dusk, city shots, or moody infrastructure scenes, it still feels measured and photographic, not CG dramatic. Overall, Frame's signature is atmosphere plus clarity, images that read fast, feel real, and support architectural intent rather than overpower it. Number 38, Paris Picture Club. Paris Picture Club doesn't chase the typical ArchViz look. Their images feel closer to editorial photography and graphic composition than to marketing renderings. Across their work, the first thing you notice is restraint. They avoid the typical hyper-contrast, hyper-saturated look, and instead lean into soft daylight, overcast skies, and a calm, almost editorial exposure. It reads like photography, not rendering. Trees, streets, facades, and background buildings aren't treated as filler. They are composed like a real city frame with believable depth and a very controlled hierarchy. Their compositions are quietly confident, lots of breathing room, strong verticals, and a clear sense of urban rhythm. Even when the project is the hero, the image still respects the context around it. That's where the collective mindset shows. Artists, designers, architects, you can feel all of those perspectives working together. The graphics are clean, but not sterile. The atmosphere stays human. A signature move is how they handle time and mood. The daylight versions feel airy and honest. Then the evening scenes shift into a gentle blue hour language. Warm windows, subtle life, no drama for drama's sake. It's not cinematic, it's believable. And I like their relationship with detail. They don't shout materials at you. Brick, stone, greenery, glazing, it's all there, but it sits in the image like it would in a real photograph. Present, legible, and never screaming for attention. People are used sparingly and well, mainly to confirm scale and pace, not to sell emotion. It's not surprising so many studios try to mimic this aesthetic. Paris Picture Club's real advantage isn't a filter, it's control. Images that guide a project through its phases and keep their impact over time, because the craft holds. Number 37, Studio SME. Studio SME's visuals feel like architectural cinematography, calm, precise, and quietly confident. On the exterior work, they love clean, readable compositions, often framed by trees or urban context, with straight verticals and a very controlled camera height. The light is usually natural and believable, with soft skies, gentle contrast, and just enough atmosphere to separate foreground from background. In some scenes, the building glows with warm interior light against cooler surroundings, giving the image that real place, real time feeling instead of a polished showroom look. Their interiors follow the same mindset. Restrained palettes, lots of warm wood and neutral surfaces, and lighting that feels bounced and natural rather than overly stylized. What stands out is the balance, crisp detail where it matters, but never noisy. Reflections are subtle, materials read clean, and the space feels genuinely inhabitable, like you could step into it right now. Overall, Studio SME sits in that sweet spot between photoreal and editorial. Images that sell the architecture, but also respect it. If you like ArchViz that feels buildable, modern, and quietly high-end, this is a studio to study. Number 36. Gorczyca Studio. Gorczyca Studio has a very specific kind of realism, calm, tactile, and quietly cinematic. Their images don't shout, they settle in. What hits first is the light. It's rarely perfect daylight. Instead, it's believable daylight, soft overcast, late afternoon warmth, or that slightly moody blue-tinted atmosphere that makes materials feel real. Composition is equally restrained. Cameras are placed like a photographer would place them. Foreground trees, framing walls, cropped edges, reflections, and gentle depth layers make the scenes feel observed, not staged. Interiors are all about texture and weight. Stone, wood, fabric, matte surfaces, warm highlights, and controlled shadows. Styling is minimal but intentional, with enough life to suggest habit without turning into decoration. And outside, they're strong at context. Landscape isn't just green around a building, it's used to shape mood and scale, often letting nature partially hide the architecture so it feels integrated, not presented. Overall, Gorczyca Studio's visual language is confident and mature. Less marketing gloss, more atmosphere and credibility. The kind of work that makes architecture feel already lived in. Number 35. Prague-based. If you're into ArchViz that feels quiet, grounded, and genuinely architectural, Prague-based is one to watch. What hits first is their restraint. Clean compositions, calm camera heights, plenty of negative space, bright, slightly desaturated skies, soft daylight, and materials that feel real without sliding into that overpolished look. Even when the architecture is bold, the images stay controlled, more considered than performative. You see it in the residential work. Simple volumes, crisp plaster, gentle shadows, and just enough lived-in detail, a bit of modest landscaping, rough stone paving, maybe a figure or two for scale. The larger urban scenes have that very European competition clarity. Structured facades, rhythmic grids, and greenery that feels integrated, not sprinkled on top. Courtyards feel believable, with strong depth, clean verticals, and sunlight that behaves like sunlight. Prague-based has that rare balance of precision and atmosphere, images that carry both the idea and the feeling of a place. Number 34. Pixel Flakes. Pixel Flakes is less pretty renders and more image making with a photographic mindset. Their visuals are built around one clear idea, a believable moment captured with intention, not decoration. One of their biggest strengths is people integration. They're masters at it. The scale feels right, the density feels natural, and the poses don't read like ArchViz cutouts. People sit inside the light correctly. They cast the right shadows, and they add rhythm and narrative without stealing focus. Look at how they handle scale. Big towers and large developments still feel human because the camera is anchored in real viewpoints. Street corners, forecourts, pedestrian routes, and aerials that read like actual drone shots. Lighting is where they quietly win. Daylight scenes stay crisp and legible, while dusk and blue hour shots use haze and glow to simplify shapes and separate layers. It's atmosphere with a purpose, never just cinema. Number 33. Cube. Cube's portfolio is all about range. But it never feels random. They can jump from a rough, cave-like spa interior with wet stone and warm pools to a crisp city street view where glass, greenery, and pedestrian life feel completely natural. And then they'll switch again into pure atmosphere, misty mountain landscapes, rainy nights, or a sunrise scene where the building is almost a silhouette. What stays consistent is the way they stage architecture. The camera is always chosen with intent. Long perspectives, strong foreground framing, and lots of confidence with negative space. Light is the main tool. Sometimes it's soft overcast that makes proportions read cleanly. Sometimes it's hard, low sun. Sometimes it's pure artificial glow in a dark, cinematic scene. They're also genuinely strong at integrating people, crowds, small groups, everyday movement, even big event moments. All of it adds scale and credibility without turning into decoration. Their portfolio also shows serious reach, with imagery for studios like Zaha Hadid Architects, MAD, and SOM, which makes sense given their focus on storytelling, not just depiction. Overall, /Cube doesn't just render projects, they direct scenes. Number 32, Tegmark. Tegmark's work has this quality of Scandinavian calm, with a cinematic edge underneath. Compositions are clean, with a lot of breathing room, big skies, generous negative space, and architecture that sits quietly in its context rather than demanding attention. Lighting is a real signature. Soft, overcast days, mist, wet streets, blue hour glows where reflections carry half the story. Even their daylight shots stay restrained, slightly desaturated, naturally contrasted with very controlled highlights. And then every now and then they drop something punchy, a red-lit facade at dusk, deep blacks and precise spotlights in a dramatic auditorium scene. It lands harder because the restraint around it earns it. What I genuinely like is how they balance realism with concept. Highly believable urban courtyards and waterfronts sit right alongside abstract competition imagery. Foggy silhouettes, wireframe-like structures, surreal megaforms floating in open landscapes. And throughout all of it, human scale matters. People are small, often slightly blurred, never the main character, but always there to make the scene feel inhabited and alive. Number 31, Filippo Bolognese. Filippo Bolognese is a Milan-based visualization studio founded by architect Filippo Bolognese, working in partnership with Clara Lopez. What hits first is the visual language. Quiet, confident, and rooted in a refined Mediterranean clarity. Soft atmospheres, restrained color, and an editorial calm that feels intentional, not trendy. On consistency, the level stays impressively stable across very different scenes, from large urban courtyards to minimal interiors and museum-like spaces. The grading and taste don't wobble. Visual power comes from clarity. These images don't scream, they pull you in. You remember the big structural gestures, the calm skies, and the way space is staged with patience. Composition is disciplined, strong foregrounds, clean negative space, and leading lines that guide the eye exactly where the architect wants it. Camera height and verticals are controlled, and the focal lengths feel purposeful. Lighting logic is a major strength. Lots of overcast or soft daylight, believable bounce, clean exposure. Even the more dramatic interior scenes still feel physically plausible. Overall, this is high-end ArchViz built on restraint, taste, and consistency. If you care about style as a system, this studio is a benchmark. Number 30, Dreisicht. Dreisicht's work is all about quiet confidence. The images don't chase drama, they chase clarity, and that's exactly why they feel so convincing. You get clean framing, Disciplined lines and lighting that behaves like real daylight, with soft shadows and believable reflections instead of CG shine. A lot of their portfolio sits in the high-end residential world, and you can see how they sell the lifestyle without turning it into advertising gloss. Exteriors are calm, grounded, and surrounded by credible landscape, while dusk shots lean warm and intimate, with window glow used to shape the volumes. Interiors are staged with restraint, premium materials, controlled contrast, and just enough detail to feel lived in. What stands out is how consistent the visual standard stays across stills and film frames. Same taste level, same realism, same nothing accidental art direction. It's polished but never loud. Number 29, Quant One. Quant One is one of those studios where every image feels like a film still, not a brochure shot. Their signature is atmosphere with purpose. Fog, snow, rain, deep blue hour, harsh, low winter sun. They use weather as a compositional tool, not a mood filter. It simplifies the scene, sharpens the silhouette, and makes the architecture read instantly and completely. Composition is super disciplined. Calm horizons, clean verticals, and a lot of patient negative space that gives the building room to breathe, and when they do reach for drama, it never tips into chaos. It's controlled, a single beam of light, a warm interior glow set against a cold landscape, a tiny human figure that suddenly makes the whole project feel real and inhabitable. Materiality is handled with the same restraint. Timber looks like timber, concrete has weight, glass behaves like glass. Nothing feels over-polished, but everything feels considered. Even the more conceptual projects land as believable places you could actually step into. Quant One doesn't just visualize architecture, they build a mood around it, and that mood stays with you long after you've moved on. Number 28, Rhythm. Rhythm's work feels like stills from a film you want to step into. They love strong, quiet compositions, big skies, lots of breathing room, and architecture placed with confidence, often slightly off-center, so the scene feels lived in, not staged. Lighting is where they really flex. You'll see crisp daytime realism, but the mood shifts fast into blue hour and soft twilight, with warm interior glow used like a narrative cue, guiding your eye through the frame. Rhythm also leans heavily into atmosphere and context. Mist rolls over a landscape, water turns into a mirror, dense greenery becomes a framing device. The architecture isn't isolated, it's embedded, surrounded, sometimes almost swallowed by nature. And when they go conceptual, they still keep it grounded. Clean geometry, tactile materials, and tiny human moments for scale and story, whether it's a floating cluster of cabins on a lake or a tower caught in that exact minute before night fully arrives. Number 27, Buildform. Buildform is a Vienna-based architectural visualization studio run by Vladislav Kalinovic. What immediately stands out is how photographic the work feels. Real camera logic, honest, street-level viewpoints, and a calm, restrained composition style. They're clearly comfortable letting atmosphere do the heavy lifting. Overcast skies, wet asphalt, winter light, dusk scenes, and those subtle in-between moments that make an image feel lived in. I also like how they handle context and scale. People aren't pasted in to look busy. They're placed like a photographer would frame them. Small, natural, sometimes slightly blurred, supporting the architecture instead of competing with it. And when they go more conceptual, they still keep it grounded with believable light and strong silhouettes. If you're into visualizations that feel more like carefully shot architectural photography than glossy marketing renders, Buildform is absolutely worth checking out. Number 26, Chiasm. Chiasm's visual language is very cinematic, but in a quiet, controlled way. Their images don't try to impress with noise, they pull you in with composition, atmosphere, and restraint. They lean on strong geometry and clean framing, big legible silhouettes, confident lines, and a lot of negative space that makes the architecture feel intentional. Light is doing the storytelling here. You get deep, dramatic shadows, soft haze, and carefully placed highlights that make surfaces feel tactile, like you can almost read the material by touch. Color is also highly curated. They move between cool daylight clarity, warm dusk tones, and rich night moods without ever feeling overprocessed. Everything stays balanced and believable, but still elevated. What I like most? There's a sense of calm narrative. The result feels premium, architectural, and slightly poetic, like each frame is designed, not just rendered. Number 25. Directed. If you like Swedish-style realism, Directed is the right studio. What stands out immediately is how calm and believable their images feel. They don't rely on perfect drama. They build atmosphere with real-world cues, low winter sun and long blue shadows, soft overcast greens by the lake, or that crisp twilight mood where the building becomes a silhouette. Directed are also really good at integrating people. Not cut-out crowds, but small, natural moments that explain scale and use. Kids on the snow slope, quiet movement in public spaces, office life that feels observed, not staged. Composition-wise, they love strong framing. Trees in the foreground, deep perspective lines, and big simple forms that read instantly. Materials are handled with restraint, especially glass reflections and warm timber tones, so the architecture stays the main character. Overall, high-end visual storytelling for architects and developers with a distinctly Nordic sense of light, context, and understatement. Number 24. Piotr Banak. Piotr Banak's work is a great example of ArchViz that feels designed in the same way a good photograph is designed. On his site, he literally frames it as evocative images. And that's exactly the vibe. Calm, atmospheric, and emotionally readable without being dramatic. What stands out first is the grading. He leans into soft highlights, gentle contrast, and slightly hazy daylight, often with warm seasonal tones, so everything feels natural and believable, not CG crisp. The compositions are super controlled too. Clean horizons, straight verticals, lots of breathing room, and a strong sense of foreground to background depth. And then there's the context work. Trees, grass, paths, little silhouettes of people, even the way the light hits the landscape, it's never just decoration. It's part of the story that makes the architecture feel like it already belongs to the place. The buildings usually sit quietly inside the scene, confident, not screaming for attention. If you're into ArchViz that's understated, cinematic in a subtle way, and closer to contemporary architectural photography than marketing imagery, Piotr Banak is absolutely worth studying. Number 23. B-Side. Beside visuals has a very specific kind of realism. It's not the loud, over-sharpened CG look. It's controlled, architectural, and premium, with images that feel confidently designed rather than aggressively rendered. They're also part of the Playtime Group, a trio of complementary studios that combine their strengths to respond to the most demanding visual communication needs in architecture. Across the group, composition and light are the common tools, with a very photographic approach that's meant to transmit the virtues of each project clearly, especially for competitions in public buildings. Within that ecosystem, B-Side leans into exclusivity. Their focus is high-end real estate and sensitive interior design, where nuance and small details really matter. And you can feel that in the visual language. Clarity comes first. You always understand the space immediately, the proportions, the massing, and how it sits in context. Lighting supports that readability even when they go for mood. They're especially strong at calm dusk atmospheres, warm interior glow against cooler ambient light, subtle reflections, and believable depth without overdoing effects. Composition stays disciplined too. Clean perspective choices, strong lines, and a tight hierarchy where architecture reads first, atmosphere second, details last. People, when used, are restrained and purposeful, more about scale and everyday life cues than decoration. Overall, B-Side is a great reference if you like ArchViz that feels architect first, refined and premium, built around light, composition, and a real respect for detail. Number 22, 11. 11 is a London-based creative studio that sits right on the edge between architectural visualization and editorial imagery. Founded in 2019 by Joanna Maduro and Anita Gasiorska, the team is made up of architects, interior designers, and creatives, and it shows in how design-led their visuals feel. What stands out immediately is their control of atmosphere. The lighting is never dramatic for the sake of it. It's used like a compositional tool, guiding your eye, carving out depth, and letting materials do the talking. In projects like the gas holders' penthouses, the mood comes from warm interior glow against cooler exterior tones, with framing that feels calm, human, and intentional. They also put real effort into authenticity. From on-site observation to scanning objects and documenting materials, so the environments don't feel generic or staged. Overall, 11's work feels precise, tactile, and quietly luxurious. Less like CGI, more like a carefully photographed moment that just happens to be unbuilt. Number 21, HISM. If you want to understand HISM in one sentence, it's cinematic luxury, built on light, scale, and restraint. Their images start with architecture as atmosphere. Vast floor-to-ceiling glazing turns the city into a backdrop and a material at the same time. You'll notice how they frame views like portrait photography. The skyline is never just outside. It's staged, centered, and quietly monumental. Inside, the language is calm and tactile. Warm timber, veined marble, brushed metal, soft textiles, and carefully spaced furniture. Nothing shouts. The drama comes from proportion and from sunlight sliding across surfaces, creating long, confident shadows. HISM also loves contrast. Morning clarity versus dusk glow. Cool blue city haze against warm interior amber. Even in night scenes, the mood stays elegant, never noisy, with lighting that feels curated like a high-end hotel lobby. On the exterior side, glass is treated like a mirror and a fabric. Crisp reflections, precise vertical rhythm, and a strong sense of crafted detail, often paired with lush, composed landscaping. Overall, HISM doesn't just show projects. They sell a lifestyle of quiet prestige, where every frame feels expensive, intentional, and timeless. Number 20. Monolot. Monolot is a studio that treats ArchViz less like advertising and more like editorial photography. Their visuals feel quiet and intentional, with a lot of negative space and compositions that breathe. You'll often see architecture placed slightly off-center, framed by a single tree line, a facade edge, or a long horizon, like the camera arrived a second before the perfect moment. The color grading is restrained, cool, pale daylight, soft contrast, and then one controlled accent, usually warm window glow or a gentle sunbreak. Even winter scenes stay elegant, not dramatic, with snow, foggy distance, and a calm, almost acoustic mood. Interiors follow the same logic: clean geometry, tactile materials, and natural light that feels believable. The spaces look lived in but never cluttered, and the people are there to support scale and story, not to steal the scene. Overall, Monolot's visual language is about atmosphere and authenticity, subtle lighting, confident framing, and storytelling that makes the architecture feel real before it's even built. Number 19, Bucharest Studio. Bucharest Studio is my favorite visualization studio in Romania, and you understand why within seconds of looking at their work. Their images don't just show architecture, they stage a moment. On the competition side, they go big and cinematic. Strong silhouettes, ultra-clean compositions, a single hero gesture placed against a vast sky, open water or atmospheric haze. Blue hour reflections that mirror a building like a graphic symbol. Warm interiors glowing through glass. Dramatic sunsets where the architecture becomes a sharp highlight inside a sea of mood. But the drama never tips into noise. The frames stay calm, legible, and intentional. Carefully controlled contrast. A real sense of architectural order. And then their real estate work shows exactly how well they can switch gears. Bright, premium, lifestyle-driven. Interiors with soft daylight, curated furniture, and just enough personality to feel lived in without looking staged. Exteriors leaning into glossy materials, warm hospitality lighting, and a high-end resort sensibility. Bucharest Studio sits right in that sweet spot between emotion and precision. And that balance is exactly what great visualization should be. Number 18, Third. The Third is an international visual studio with offices in Ghent, Berlin, and Madrid that approaches architectural imagery like documentary photography, calm, observant, and built around real moments. In their archive, you'll notice how often the architecture isn't the loudest thing in the frame. A courtyard in spring, a grey street corner after rain, a winter campus, a quiet interior with soft daylight, even scenes that feel almost non-architectural, like a concert crowd, an airplane close-up, kids painting, or a skater at night. That mixes the point. They're showing the world a project will belong to. Stylistically, they lean into natural light, weather, and seasonality. Color is restrained, contrast is gentle, and the compositions feel photographic. Strong horizons, careful framing through trees or street edges, and lots of breathing space. People are used sparingly but smartly, often candid and small in scale to sell atmosphere and everyday life, rather than posing the building. If you like visuals that communicate architecture through mood and storytelling, the Third is absolutely worth a deep scroll. Number 17, Visualent. Visualent is my number one pick in Sweden, and their work makes it pretty obvious why. They're a Gothenburg-based ArchViz studio founded in 2018 by Britta Wickholm, and their whole approach is built around one thing: communication through atmosphere. For Visualent, a visualization isn't just a nice image. It's about truly understanding the project and translating it into something people can instantly feel. In the portfolio, what hits first is how light and nature do the heavy lifting. They don't sprinkle trees and sunbeams on top, they use them as core design elements. Soft, seasonal mood, believable reflections, weather, and calm compositions that let the architecture breathe. Their images feel quietly confident. Clean framing, strong material read, restrained color palette, and a photographic realism that doesn't need to shout. You'll also see range from urban exteriors to interiors and more experimental lab explorations, plus collaborations with major practices like Woods Bagot and Snohätta. My opinion, Visualent nails that rare balance between beauty and credibility. The mood sells the project, but the architecture stays the hero. Number 16, Beauty and the Bit. With Beauty and the Bit, you're not browsing renders, you're stepping into a visual research lab. Their visual language is built on bold composition and clear graphic hierarchy. They love strong silhouettes, clean geometry, and frames that feel almost editorial, like a carefully designed magazine spread. What really stands out is how they treat light as the main storyteller. Sometimes it's soft and airy, sometimes it's cinematic and moody, but it always has intention. Highlights are controlled, shadows are expressive, and reflections are used like punctuation, not decoration. They're also comfortable switching between hyper-real and near-abstract. You'll see a confident range, minimal, calm atmospheres next to high-contrast, dramatic scenes. Color is never random either. It's either restrained and material-driven or pushed into bold, iconic statements. And even when people appear, it's not crowd dressing, it's scale, rhythm, and a hint of narrative. Overall, the vibe is conceptual, graphic, atmospheric. Architecture is the subject, but mood is the message. Number 15. AmiWorks. AmiWorks is a studio focused on architectural imagery that feels less like presentation and more like cinema. Their signature is precise framing and disciplined lighting. You'll notice compositions that let geometry do the talking. Long, clean lines, calm perspectives, and space that breathes. Even in bright scenes, the mood stays controlled and intentional. And when they go dramatic, they really go for it. Heavy skies, deep contrast, and a kind of tension that makes the architecture feel alive, not just documented. What I like most is how they chase the emotional core of a project. They don't overload the frame. They reduce everything to the essentials: structure, atmosphere, and a few perfectly placed human moments for scale and story. With years of experience on high-profile architectural and design projects, AmiWorks has developed a recognizable visual language that pushes beyond the safe, standard render. Their work has also gained international recognition, including awards in major design competitions. My take? If you want visuals that feel direct, elegant, and memorable, AmiWorks absolutely delivers. Number 14. Sora? The first thing you notice about Sora is what's not there. No noise, no overworked drama, no "look how impressive our rendering is" energy. Their images feel like high-end architectural photography, and that restraint is the whole point. They're exceptional at clean graphic compositions with just enough life to make a scene believable. Take their close-up work on MVRDV's Wuhan library roof. Every panel line, every rib of geometry, reading perfectly. That kind of material and detail control is hard to pull off without it looking clinical. Sora makes it feel precise and alive, but they can shift gears too. There's an interior scene in their portfolio, warm, layered, full of people, signage, and steam, that feels like a real moment caught on camera, not a staged render. And their exterior work is equally convincing, with photo-style integration that sells scale immediately through natural daylight and real-world context. Their client list says a lot. Big, Snohetta, Geary, MVRDV, 3XN. If you want to study calm, premium ArchViz with zero waste, Sora is the reference. Number 13. Aesthetica Studio. Aesthetica Studio is a great pick if you like architectural visuals that feel quietly cinematic. Their portfolio is packed with public and cultural architecture, and what jumps out immediately is how photographic everything feels. Big, confident compositions, clean framing, and a strong sense of real weather and real atmosphere, especially in those Nordic scenes, foggy waterfronts, cold overcast skies, soft winter light. Their visual language is all about controlled mood. They combine disciplined composition with expressive lighting and refined grading, so the work can feel understated and powerful at the same time. What I personally love most, their color grading. It's controlled, never loud, but always intentional. Cool tones stay rich without going flat, and warm scenes keep detail without turning orange. That's a hard balance to hit, and they hit it consistently. Overall, Aesthetica's work feels like architectural visualization made for people who care about mood, material, and atmosphere, not just pretty renders. Number 12. Carl Williams Visualization. Carl Williams visualization feels like quiet confidence in CGI form. The images don't shout, they breathe. You get a lot of patient, natural daylight, soft skies, and a very controlled palette that lets materials do the talking. Architecture stays clean and readable, but never sterile because context is always doing work. Trees, terrain, water, and long sightlines that make the projects feel place, not pasted. What stands out most is the sense of atmosphere without tricks. Reflections are subtle, glass is believable, shadows stay soft, and the camera is always at a human height, like you're actually there. Even when the scene is high-end, it's not glossy marketing noise, it's a composed portrait of the design. If you like ArchViz that prioritizes calm framing, real light, and credible environments over drama, Carl Williams is absolutely top tier. And yeah, this is the kind of work that makes architects look better because it respects the architecture first. Number 11. Prologue. Prologue feels less like a render studio and more like a visual storytelling team that happens to use CGI. Even the way they present the work as short stories says a lot. Every image is built around a moment, a mood, and a point of view, not just a clean facade. Their visual language leans cinematic, but still grounded. You get confident street-level perspectives, real urban depth, and lighting that behaves like actual conditions. Overcast softness, blue hour glow, punchy interior warmth, and shadows that feel earned. That mix creates images that read like photography with narrative intent. What I really like is the life they inject without turning it into lifestyle advertising. People, movement, little imperfections in atmosphere, it all supports the architecture instead of distracting from it. And they're not afraid of character either. The tone is often playful and human, which is rare at this level. They're based in Amsterdam, and the work fits that vibe. Sharp taste, strong atmosphere, and a clear obsession with storytelling. Number 10. NRML. NRML, a 3D visualization studio in Lisbon, founded in 2020 by Richard John Seymour, photographer and filmmaker turned visual artist. What defines them? Restraint, calm, editorial, intentional, soft contrast, disciplined compositions, and a natural light sensibility that reads more like a film still than a CG showcase. Even when the architecture is bold, the images don't shout. They hold atmosphere without gimmicks, subtle weather, believable haze, tones that stay mature and grounded, materials that feel clean and tactile, and consistent grading that makes their work feel like a coherent body, not a random collection of styles. If you like architectural imagery that's contemporary, cultured, and quietly confident, NRML belongs in your top 10. Number 9. Plump. Plump's portfolio feels like a studio that's obsessed with believability through atmosphere. Their visual language isn't perfect and clean by default, it's situational. Foggy nights, rainy streets, blue hour glow, harsh midday sun, even snow and extreme landscapes. And the cool part is, the architecture still reads clearly in all of it. They're really strong at scale and context. A lot of their images are built like real urban moments, with deep backgrounds, proper distance, and that camera-eye composition where you feel the street, the crowd, the infrastructure, not just the building. People are used smartly too. Silhouettes, subtle motion, everyday life, enough to sell scale and mood without turning it into cheesy lifestyle marketing. At the same time, they can switch gears into crisp daylight interiors and competition-style design argument shots, where the geometry and spatial idea is the hero. So you get this range. Cinematic storytelling on one end, precise architectural communication on the other. If you want a reference for big, credible visuals that still have drama and atmosphere, Plump is seriously strong. Number 8. Negative. Negative is one of those studios where you immediately feel the architectural intent first and the CG part second. They describe themselves as a boutique visualization workshop working at the intersection of architecture, design, marketing, and real estate, often in close collaboration with world-class architectural offices. And you can see that mindset in how their images are framed. The visuals aren't just pretty pictures, they're arguments. Clear hierarchy, confident composition, and a strong sense of what the project wants to be. What I like most is the balance between precision and atmosphere. Negative tends to avoid noisy gimmicks and instead builds mood through light, weather, and scale. Human presence is used sparingly but deliberately to make spaces feel believable and lived in, without stealing focus from the architecture. In short, if you're looking for visuals that feel competition-ready, cinematic and concept-driven, Negative is absolutely worth studying. Number 7. Plankton. If I had to pick one Polish studio that consistently nails taste plus storytelling, it's Plankton Group. Their visual language is cinematic, but not in a more contrast, more drama way. It's cinematic because every image feels directed. The camera choices are bold and architectural, often low and deliberate, with strong silhouettes and clear hierarchy. You always know what the hero idea is, and everything else supports it. What really defines their look is atmosphere used as a design tool. Light is rarely neutral. They lean into weather, haze, dusk tones, and soft diffusion to create depth and scale, so the project feels like it belongs to a real place with real air in it, not a perfect showroom. Materials stay believable, but the finish is controlled and refined, almost like high-end visual art rather than pure marketing. And you can tell they're not just still image people, they're a Warsaw-based team of architects working across architectural rendering, competition visuals, animation, and even VR, which explains why the work feels so composed and narrative-driven. If you want ArchViz that makes juries and clients feel the project, not just understand it, Plankton is the reference. Number 6. Bloom Images. Bloom Images represents the absolute top tier of contemporary architectural visualization. This is work designed to convince, to sell, and to feel effortlessly real. Their style is highly photorealistic, clean, and confident. Lighting is precise, often bright and optimistic, but always physically plausible. Materials read instantly, calibrated for credibility at scale. What really sets Bloom Images apart is how alive their images feel. People are not an afterthought here. They are fully integrated into the scene, moving naturally, interacting with architecture, light, and each other in a way that feels completely convincing. Figures and context are used thoughtfully. Nothing feels staged, cut out, or pasted in. People belong to the space as much as the buildings do. It's clear that Bloom Images has embraced advanced AI workflows and pushed them hard, not to replace artistry, but to remove friction. The result is an exceptional level of realism, density, and natural variation that would be extremely difficult to achieve otherwise. Despite the technical sophistication, the images never feel synthetic. AI disappears into the background, serving a clear goal: images that feel photographic, contemporary, and human. Their primary clients are some of the world's most renowned architects, alongside real estate developers, manufacturers, and leading marketing agencies. And it shows in the clarity, polish, and commercial strength of the work. Every image communicates value, livability, and atmosphere at first glance. Across large-scale master plans, residential developments, and urban environments, the visual language stays consistent. Cohesive lighting, controlled color, believable life, and strong architectural presence. Bloom Images excels at one thing in particular, making future architecture feel undeniably real, populated, and ready to be lived in. This is visualization where technology, craft, and storytelling are perfectly aligned. Number 5. Wax. Wax is my favorite kind of ArchViz. Images that feel like you're already there. Their whole approach is built around storytelling from a human perspective, and you can see it in every decision, especially lighting and composition. They're not chasing glossy perfection, they're chasing credibility with emotion. Visually, Wax has this cinematic realism that still reads architectural. They love real conditions: soft overcast skies, blue hour, warm interior glow against cool exteriors, haze, reflections, even little life cues like movement and atmosphere that make the scene breathe. The architecture stays clear, but the image has depth and a mood, like a frame from a film rather than a brochure shot. What separates them is taste and restraint. People are used subtly for scale and narrative, never as cheesy decoration. Materials read honest, but the real magic is how everything is staged to guide your eye and tell the story of the place. Wax calls it envisioning the unbuilt, and honestly, that's exactly what it feels like. Number 4. Playtime. If you're into architectural visualization that feels like real photography, you need to know Playtime. They're based in Barcelona, and honestly, that alone sets the mood. This city breathes architecture, light, and rhythm, and you can feel it in their work. Playtime is not just one studio. It's a group built from 3 complementary studios that joined forces to handle the most demanding visual communication in architecture. And you see that range immediately. Calm, competition-ready images that read in 1 second but still reward you when you look closer. Their visual language is all about composition and light, strong silhouettes, clean hierarchy, and a camera logic that feels natural, like the shot was found, not constructed. They're masters at atmosphere too. Haze, reflections, twilight, weather, all used with restraint to make the architecture feel present and believable. What I really respect is their discipline. They don't chase noise, they build clarity, mood, and credibility. If your project needs visuals that can win trust fast, Playtime is a top-tier reference. Number 3. Engram. Meet Engram, a team of architects and artists creating digital illustrations and films for architecture since the 1990s. They work primarily for architects, and you can feel that mindset in every image. These are not feature lists, they're portraits. Engram designs each scene as a connected whole, shaping what you notice first and what you remember later. Their signature tools are framing and lighting, used to build a powerful first reading that hits instantly on an emotional level. Look at the way sculptural forms sit against a vast coastline, or how a dark volume is revealed through forest light, or how a glowing night interior becomes the entire story of a building. Engram's goal is simple: create iconic images that express the essence of a project in the cleanest, strongest way possible. Number 2. Brick Visual. Brick Visual has a kind of confidence that's rare in this industry. Their work is cinematic, but never chaotic. What makes them stand out is how they use atmosphere. Rain, fog, dusk, winter light. These aren't decorative choices, they're tools. Tools for separating layers, simplifying scenes, and making sure that first visual hit lands instantly, even on massive, complex projects. And consistency? That's the real flex. This isn't a small boutique where 5 images are perfect and the rest fall off. The quality holds across an enormous body of work, and that's partly down to how they're structured. Brick Visual operates less like a single studio and more like an ecosystem. Several independent teams, each with their own leadership and visual focus, almost like mini studios under one roof. Composition is where they consistently win. Clear hierarchy, disciplined camera height, frames that lead your eye to the architecture, not the rendering, and they've got the recognition to back it up. CG Architects Studio of the Year and Commissioned Image of the Year, both in 2024. If you're studying what high-end ArchViz looks like at scale, start here. Number 1. Mir. Mir needs no introduction in the ArchViz world. They're hyped, widely referenced, and constantly cited as a benchmark. And for good reason. The name literally means peace, and you feel that the moment you land on their work. But before anything else, let's talk about the portfolio itself. It's one of the most curated in the industry. You're not getting a fire hose of projects here. Mir is selective, almost ruthlessly so, and that restraint alone tells you something about how they operate. What makes it to the portfolio is there because it earned its place. And they are lucky in the best possible way. The architects they work with are some of the most interesting practices in the world. Major museums, operas, bridges, airports, stadiums, the kind of commissions where the architecture itself is already doing half the work. That's a real advantage, and Mir knows how to meet it. When great architecture lands in the right hands, the results speak for themselves. What really makes the portfolio feel rich, though, is how they treat each project. You rarely get one image per building, you get several, and they're genuinely different from each other. Different seasons, different lighting conditions, different moods, sometimes completely different visual approaches within the same commission. One image might be a misty winter morning, with the building barely visible through fog. The next is sharp, sunny, almost graphic. It's that variety within a single project that makes the whole portfolio feel alive and endlessly revisitable. That experimentation runs deep. Mir doesn't settle on a formula and repeat it. You can feel them testing, pushing, asking what else this building could be in a different light, a different season, a different emotional register. And because the underlying craft is so strong, landscape-first compositions, tactile materials, light that behaves like actual light, the experiments land. Mir was founded in 2000 by Mats and Trond, and today their hand-picked team of around 10 international artists works out of Bergen, surrounded by fjords, forests, and mountains. That proximity to nature isn't just aesthetic context, it's a philosophy. They're not producing images, they're trying to spark enthusiasm. Because enthusiasm, as they put it, is the first step toward change. Mir doesn't just visualize architecture, they make you feel grateful that places like this could exist. Those were my top 50 ArchViz studios in Europe. If you want to discover more great studios around the world, follow the channel and check out ArchVizBase.com, my curated database of more than 1,000 hand-picked ArchViz studios worldwide.